the only local channel covering all of the CNMI.
End your week well informed with KMCV News.
Here's a glimpse of what's in store. The governor gets involved with the fiscal 93 budget impasse by asking for reprogramming authority.
And the arts community band together at a public hearing to fund a CNMI museum and performing arts center.
And the traffic in the CNMI is getting worse each day. We'll examine why and what can be done to improve it.
It's bumper to bumper reports on tonight's KMCV News. Good evening and welcome to the Friday broadcast of KMCV News. I'm Glenn Wakai.
And I'm Nanette Miranda. Thanks for joining us this evening. We'll have weather and sports in just a few minutes.
But first, the budget tops our newscast once again. The sun is setting on a budget for fiscal year 1993. With about a month left before it ends, there are no solutions on the horizon. Earlier this week, Budget Conference Committee discussions came to a halt. Two senators walked out of the meeting citing irreconcilable differences over the number of full-time employees for Rota and Tinian. Now the governor has jumped into the picture, asking for reprogramming authority to keep the government operating. Talking about money is no easy task. Just ask the legislature. Last year, lawmakers were almost 11 months late in passing a budget. In this go-around, they've already eclipsed that mark. This morning, Governor Lorenzo de Leon Guerrero met with Senate President Juan Demopan and House Speaker Tomas Villagomez. He urged them to have the conference committee reconvene or appoint new members.
I think it's most appropriate if they would continue the efforts of the legislature in trying to reach some sort of a consensus in how they are going to address the fiscal year 93 budget.
In the meantime, Guerrero wants the legislature to give him the authority to reprogram funds.
Some of the importance needed in the departments, those are important things that they must be funded.
Guerrero has already submitted the fiscal year 94 budget and hopes that a similar delay won't be seen next year. House Speaker Tomas Villagomez doubts that will happen.
The budget is being used as a more political thing in there. Personally, I feel that it should be addressed more for the benefit of the people in there, not just one owns political goal. And by 1994, there's no election coming up. The people would decide in there.
It's very easy to start pointing fingers, particularly at a time like this. But I think we should just set aside our emotions. There's something to do that is in the interest of our people, and let's get it and do it.
What conferees have to do is pass a $159 million budget that has gone through numerous facelifts by the Senate and House. Is it that important to pass a budget when it's only going to be useful for 30 days?
Well, sometimes they say it's better late than never.
Conferee Pete Regis has been an outspoken critic of his senatorial counterparts. Late this afternoon, President Juan Demopan issued a press release. It stated the founders of the Commonwealth created a bicameral legislature to protect Rota and Tinian from people like Regis. Demopan went on to say the system is working properly and Regis, quote, suffers from a mental block.
Illegal hiring may be holding up the passage of the budget. In Monday's House session, Congressman Pete Regis said that he wanted to have an open budget conference so that no request is made that would suggest such activity. What he meant, and the representative confirmed it today, was that he has a report which documents that the mayor's office on Rota hired more employees than it was allowed. That would imply that the Rota leadership is holding on to its request for 20 full-time employees in order to keep these hires legal. An anonymous source in the House says what could happen if these illegal hires aren't accounted for in the budget is first, they would lose their jobs. Then the source says they could be ordered to repay all the salaries and benefits they received during their unauthorized employment back to the CNMI government. We will have a full report on these allegations on Monday in reaction from the Rota leadership.
As lawmakers haggle over their budget appropriations, the revenue filling the government coffers has dropped. To overcome shortfalls, there's a proposal to increase taxes and also reduce the size of government. This second option is the subject of a study by a Saipan Chamber of Commerce Special Committee. 2 out of every 3 local residents in the CNMI is employed by the government. About 75% of the $159 million fiscal year 93 budget is for salaries. The Saipan Chamber of Commerce feels the government is just too big. 5 months ago, the body established the Committee on Privatization. Those involved came from the public and private sectors. Chairperson Elizabeth Rehabi feels there are several services carried out by the government which duplicate those offered by businesses.
The business community has reached the level of sophistication where it can assume some of the functions that the government is presently doing. And at times it may be in competition with the private sector.
This is the positions of our administration as well, is to find areas and how we can best continue the efficiencies of public services, at the same time cut costs.
The committee recommended cutting into government operations in 21 areas.
Some of those functions include government staff housing, maintenance of those houses, vehicle maintenance, the survey services, the slaughterhouse, gasoline station, the bus system, not only the PSS, but the other buses that the government is operating.
Other areas include the sanitary landfill, the food service program in the public schools, and roadside maintenance.
In terms of CUC, we recommended utility billing and collection services and utility meter reading services.
The Privatization Committee stated diversification and development of the private sector will lead to a healthier economy, which in the end will benefit everyone.
And I'm wholeheartedly in agreement that those areas we should look into it seriously.
The Chamber recommends the Governor establish a privatization task force to recommend necessary legislation.
And coming up next, an executive with United Travel Agency is charged with passing $42,000 in bad checks.
And a check of island roads will indicate there are serious traffic problems surfacing.
A senior vice president of United Travel Agency has been arrested for passing 3 bad business checks worth over $42,000. According to court documents, Kam Sun Oh, known as Kathy, issued drafts to Asiana Airlines, but they were returned by the bank for insufficient funds. She was arrested yesterday. Oh's bail was set at $500,000, but Judge Marty Taylor lowered that amount to $100,000 today during her bail hearing this morning. He ordered that Oh can be released to a third-party custodian once she posts 10 of the $100,000 bail. 4 people have come forward to be Oh's custodian. Oh will be on Monday. With a staggering economy, wavering federal relations, and Article 12, it's difficult for any other issue to receive the same kind of attention. But ask any supporter of the arts community, and they'll say that preserving the local heritage could be placed right up there on that list.
Members from the local arts community are banding together to push for 2 pieces of legislation. One would establish a CNMI museum and the other a performing arts center. Today they showed up in full force to testify at a public hearing, which was conducted by the House Committee on Health, Education, and Welfare.
To provide the tourists with something more tangible and cultural to take back with them and remember us by, and not to remember us by Scorpio or all these other clubs that are omnipresent in our hotel streets.
A facility like the Cultural and Performing Arts Center is way overdue, and not for our tourists, not for revenue that it might create, and I don't think we should go about this facility as something to create revenue. I don't think it's going to be self-sufficient anytime soon.
The arts and the culture and the traditions and the customs of the Northern Marianas people are priority of this government, of the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. But when it comes down to appropriation of funds available, the arts, the culture, the traditions, the custom is buried.
Their enthusiasm, though, is obstacled by money. Maggie Wannenberg, director of the Arts Council, says they would need $9 million for a performing arts center. The current proposal seeks to take 10% of the total revenues brought in by the hotel occupancy tax. That means cutting in on the share given to Mariana's Visitors Bureau.
We must strive and aggressively promote new market segments. And again, it's not a matter of hampering, but that we must be comparable to other destinations in terms of marketing activities.
The museum is actually closer to reality. Only money for maintenance and operations stand in the way.
The museum plays a very important role in any community. The museum houses what we are as a people, where we come from. It's the history of a nation. It is sad to say that we do not have a museum here, that we can take a visitor to a place to showcase them what we are as a person or as a people. It is very sad.
Representative Terregetsu vowed to the audience that she would take charge and fight to make these projects a priority.
A public hearing on another bill, one which prohibits sexual harassment, was scheduled for this afternoon, but that has been postponed until next month.
When you drive on Commonwealth roads, you might notice you have a lot more neighbors these days. The business community is concerned about the efficient movement of people and goods. This morning, the Saipan Chamber of Commerce issued a report on the Sinamai's traffic situation. You can look left and then you can look right on Beach Road to find more cars passing by than there were 5 years ago. In 1988, there were 8,500 registered vehicles. In 1991, that figure inflated to 15,000. More cars and more trucks mean more problems. The Special Committee on Traffic issued a report outlining some of them. Chairman Efren Camacho says there are inadequate road signs and too many substandard vehicles on the road.
The Department of Public Safety must be more visible and must enforce the regulations in a more uniform basis. And perhaps reviewing the regulations with the officers would be beneficial as well. Number two, public education of traffic rules and regulations is a must.
In 1985, there were 372 accidents reported. With the increase in population, Camacho says it's no accident that number jumped to 1,300 in 1991. However, Department of Public Safety Chief Camacho says that increase is deceiving.
Because we have improved enforcement on the highway, that you have seen all these records increase. It's not the lack of enforcement, is the enforcement that we have executed on a daily basis that have increased the statistics.
With very limited sidewalks in the Commonwealth, the committee also cited the number of egresses and ingresses as a problem, meaning vehicles can either enter or exit driveways at any point. Camacho says there needs to be a limit on left-hand turns being made.
This can be done effectively by installing green areas and or sidewalks fronting the property.
Camacho drove home another point. There are 18,000 foreigners in the Sinamai, and each comes with different driving backgrounds.
It is especially critical for drivers who are not familiar with the U.S. standard of traffic rules and regulations to be advised, to be tested, to be educated before they issue driver's license.
The committee would also like to see drivers allowed to make a right turn on red. In addition, the group found a need for more coordination of school bus routes so they wouldn't snarl traffic in the afternoons.
Weather forecasting is always a gamble, and for those of you who like to place bets, you can head to the Diamond Hotel tomorrow for Las Vegas night. Doors open at 7:30 and the final bet will need to be made by midnight. Proceeds from the $5 ticket sale will benefit charitable organizations.
There is also a pair of political events taking place this weekend. Tomorrow night, the committee to re-elect Guerrero Manglonia will hold a fundraiser. The $100 a plate event will begin at 6:30 at the Pacific Islands Club in San Antonio. Then on Sunday, Democrats will hold a get-together picnic that begins at 11 in the morning at the Chalancanoa District 4 Beach Pavilion.
Great. And also one more thing, Northern Marianas Music Society is going to have a rummage sale tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. So if you can get up early, head over to the old legislative building in Susupi. And that's all the time we have for news tonight. On behalf of the entire news crew, both in front and behind the cameras, thanks for joining us this evening. Have a great weekend. Good night.
Good night.
Yes.